He actually snail mailed me a business card. He didn't have one on him. I waited for it to come in the mail.
Made sense for you to leave the Mercedes dealership, which I imagine if you're grinding there, you can do pretty well. Like, how did you know that?
Like, everybody that's from here is from somewhere else, and they're all successful people that I would be lucky to work for one day. You have to free up space for it to do so. And the biggest block in my life was the brokerage.
And the power of like mastermind groups and like, you know, paying to get in other rooms around people that are at a higher level than you.
I always knew I would do whatever I wanted to do. I didn't know I'd be successful. I just knew I would do whatever I wanted to do. I bought a failing brokerage for $20,000. It had 30 agents. They were good agents, but the owner principal kind of just mismanaged everything. But he and I stay in contact, and I have him deploy his SMS texting here. And he gets me like 12 working appointments in 2 days.
Brian North, officially welcome to Immersion Season 3. Corey and I are so excited to have you here. We're co-sponsoring the event with Growth House and Jesse. First time getting a chat with you, but we know you have a long-standing career in real estate. So happy to dive in. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, man. So take us pre-real estate. I think it's so interesting. We learn a lot of people, they get into real estate at some point in their lives. A light bulb moment goes off, but take us a little bit before that and lead us into how you got in.
Yeah, pre-real estate was the car business, which was one of the greatest entries to sales I could ever recommend. I was waiting tables after college. I'll tell you, I got a degree in sociology, so that's what you do with a degree in sociology is you wait tables after school. And so I was doing that, and I waited on the owner of a Mercedes dealership. I was in Durango, Colorado. It's a vacation town. He had a second home there. He's from Scottsdale and said, "I like your style. Come sell cars." And it was pretty cool. He actually snail mailed me a business card. He didn't have one on him. I waited for it to come in the mail. And he said to me, you're going to have to come and get me, basically, without saying it. So I would call every day, every single day. I called for almost 4 months, and he set me up on a blind date with his son, who was the sales manager, who came to Durango and stood me up. I had to do it again for 2 more months until I got in touch with him. And he called me somewhere around the 6-month mark and said, "You have a job interview in Scottsdale. You have to be here tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And it was about a 7-hour, 8-hour drive from where I was. So drove down, and I walked in, and he said, "You have a job." He said, "You did everything we can't teach, and you work at Mercedes-Benz now." That's how it started.
Was that a high-end restaurant that you worked at? I'm just curious.
It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason why I asked the question, so we've interviewed a bunch of successful entrepreneurs on our podcast, and one of the best pieces of advice that we've gotten from them is that if they were starting over at 18, they would move far away from their hometown. They would work at a country club during the day, and then at night they'd work at a high-end restaurant. And this is for that exact reason, because where does money hang out, right? At those types of places. So it worked out for you. I mean,
100%. There's a story I tell about, I call it Iron My Apron. And that's the story that I tell, where I used to, there's, what do you call it, like uniform businesses that deliver pressed shirts and stuff for us to wear at our shift. And I would take a stack of the aprons home, and I would iron the creases out of them. And my fiance at the time used to ask me, "Why do you do that?" And I said, "Because I'm auditioning." She was like, "Auditioning for what?" And I'm like, "Don't you see all the people that come into the restaurant? Like, everybody that's from here is from somewhere else, and they're all successful people that I would be lucky to work for one day." And I didn't look at that job as waiting tables. I looked at it as auditioning.
So sociology taught you how to network in a while.
No, being raised by a 17-year-old single mom and going to 12 schools taught me how to network.
Got it.
Cool. Love that. So take us into the next phase. Real estate kind of plays into your story at some point. You know, we've all heard the quote, 90% of millionaires become so, or have at least invested somewhat into real estate. How does this play into your story?
I'm selling cars at Mercedes-Benz. A guy a year older than me, I think I was 27 or 28 at the time. He was 28, 29. Still my best friend to this day. Came in to buy a car, and I said, "I'm selling them and you're buying them. What do you do?" He said, "I do real estate." And ultimately I asked, "Would you teach me what it is that you do?" And he was a wholesaler. I thought he was a real estate agent, had no idea what wholesaling was. And he said, "No, I'm a one-man show. I'm really affixed to live free lifestyle," is what he said. "I want to control my lifestyle. I want to live free. I don't want to work for anybody. I don't want employees. Just want to do what I do." And a year later, he had done about 100 deals out of his home office himself as a wholesaler. And he goes, I don't think I could do many more, with as efficient as I've gotten. I need to hire somebody like you. Do you want to come and work for me? And I became his door knocker, and I started door knocking for him.
How did you know at what point that it was made sense for you to leave the Mercedes dealership, which I imagine if you're grinding there, you can do pretty well. Like, how did you know that, and you're young, right? So you kind of just take chances, I would assume. But how did you know, like, okay, maybe pivoting into real estate was actually a good move for you?
2 easy things. One, leave the place you're currently at as good as when you found it. So if you ever fail, they'll take you back, right? I always knew that I had a fail safe. And the second thing was a percentage of commission on a higher asset class was an easy decision. If I'm making 6% on a car or 6% on a house, and I got to go do similar or same work, go do it. So it was roll the dice, go try and make more on a bigger asset class. And if I fail, I can go back to where I came from.
Got it. So wholesaling, that's how you pivoted then. You were doing door knocking. I'm curious about how that led into like the portfolio that you built yourself. Like what was I share this story sometimes too. I don't remember if it was Ian, the guy we met in Cleveland, but he said that he was a lawyer and he was doing deals he was writing up contracts for an investor. And he's like, I need to be on the other side of this table. Like he realized like this person just made, as a wholesaler, $20,000 and he made like $1,600 writing up the contract. So again, what you said, higher percentage. So what led you from the wholesaling into the rentals? And did you have a similar like epiphany that you needed to be on that side of it?
I mean, I don't know that it was that clear, to be honest. I mean, for me, it was next rung on the ladder, right? That's just how my career always really was. Like if I got to the next rung on the ladder, now what's the next rung on the ladder, right? It was just, that was it. And so for me, door knocking was a means to commission end. I mean, I was pregnant with my first child, my wife and I were, and I needed to make enough money to support my family, which I wasn't doing for the first 6 or 8 months that I was door knocking. And so it was probably a year and a half, 2 years in. Also at that time, this was 2006, 7-ish, which was the beginning of the downturn, the Great Recession here in Arizona. So while I was starting to make enough money to feed my family, the market was shifting, 180 degrees. And I was really just watching the people who were far more successful than me and going, what are they doing? What are they talking about? I was still really in vocabulary phase. I was just trying to learn new terms. I mean, at that time, it wasn't just wholesale or dispo or things like that. It was short sale. It was negotiating with lenders, bank owned or real estate owned. It was, working a trustee sale. I mean, there were so many different ways to find distressed real estate here at that time that I was really just trying to drink it like a fire hose. And eventually there were deals where a guy like me who's pretty conservative and risk averse was like, this is a deal I can't refuse. I mean, it was like, I think one of my first deals I bought was a 2-bed condo in one of the best zip codes in the city for $45,000. It was, so it was like one of those where I'm like, if I mess up, I can afford this, or I can live in it. Honestly, that's how conservative I was.
Wow. So take us to where you are today. I know you've scaled this thing and you have a brokerage yourself, and I kind of want to get here. We have limited time, but we could talk for hours, I'm sure. Talk to us about where your portfolio stands today and then the inception into how you started your brokerage.
Yeah, absolutely. Portfolio today is pretty small. We talked about this. Divorce is real.
We just talked about this. Sorry, boys. Thanks for bringing it up, dude. I know you hated Ryan.
Yeah, I'm 47 years old, right? And so for me, the way I look at it, at least generally speaking, 30s are builder years, right? I come from, my mom is a social worker. My dad is a plumber. I had zero entrepreneurial background. I didn't know, I remember sitting in a meeting one time and Derek, my mentor, who I mentioned, brought me into the real estate business. We were with about 6 or 8 of our colleagues. And he said, I want you guys to go home and come back and tell us, in effect, what your superpower is. Like, what are you built for in the world? And I remember coming back and everyone was going around the table and there was one who was like, I'm an entrepreneur. Another one was like, I create opportunities for people. And I remember I said, I'm the world's greatest sales guy. And I was like, it didn't sound cool to me. It sounded gross, like I left and I was like, it's true. But like, I remember walking out the door and looking back at everyone. I was like, I'm really lucky to be working with you entrepreneurial guys. I'm not an entrepreneur. And I walked out the door. I just didn't believe I was an entrepreneur. I was so far outside of my scope of reality. So it ended up really kind of becoming learned behavior. In those 30s, it was builder years. And, I built up a portfolio of, I think I had 11 single family houses. And then I guess my primary residence, and I had a commercial building that we reside in. It's a 9,000 square foot commercial building for the business. And then the business itself, a real estate brokerage, I bought a failing brokerage for $20,000. It had 30 agents, and they were good agents, but the owner principal kind of just mismanaged everything. He was in it for the wrong reason. And over about a 7-year period of time, I grew that from 30 agents to 290 agents. And I really, it's fun sitting here with you guys. This is really like the beginning of the next chapter of my life where I'm like, I've been on record as saying in the last couple of years, I completely misdeployed my talent. Right now, in a way, I really love people. I love growing people. I love coaching and teaching. It's kind of a natural endeavor of mine. So I did it, but it certainly wasn't the right, it didn't pay the best, right? If that makes sense, you'd think it would. Our agents represented buyers and sellers on 14,000 houses. And I can tell you that our net profits annually never surpassed $1 million a year.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, think about that. It's just a tiny margin business in the state of Arizona. And the way that we built it was right for the agent and wrong for the business, right? What it took was a cultural business. It was heavily predicated on agents being able to express their suffering in an open forum and us help them grow both personally and professionally. But that requires a massive amount of human capital. It requires a massive amount of brick and mortar. And those two things for a real estate brokerage are absolute killers. And we couldn't get ourselves out of it because we had pigeonholed ourselves into this kind of moniker of the place that you go to grow yourself. It was like a personal development company that didn't charge the right fee, if that makes sense. So now, and then divorce, Arizona's pretty easy. It's 50-50 if anyone wants to know. And there's no way to really hide it unless you want to go to jail or be a bad human. And so, and I was telling him, I mean, something to know though, and I think it's valuable, is, for me, the one thing I had to come out of that with, because I had my working years ahead of me, was I needed to own the business and the building outright. So in order to do that, she got all the cash and she got virtually all of the portfolio, because that was the even trade in the state, basically, for the business valuation and the building. So I really started, when divorce was final, I had a thriving business that didn't make a lot of money, I mean, frankly, relative to the effort and the liability, frankly, and a building that I owed about what it was worth, but I had a lot of working years, a lot of horsepower, a lot of knowledge, and it was one of those things where you just go, hey, this is what cards I dealt myself, if I'm being real, and I'm going to go get after it and play get back. And I could say right now I'm close to even again, which feels like a huge win for me.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
That's a real life story too. A lot of people hide from that, and I appreciate you sharing it, because there's probably a lot of people listening like, damn, I am going through that and I want to build back, and just it's a mental battle too. It's not 100%. Just dollars and cents.
It was all mental battle, because I had everything. I had the network. I knew how to market. I knew how to find deals. I knew how to underwrite deals. I had a reputation. People would trust me in town. If I brought you a deal and say I got a deal, I can do a deal. So I had everything I didn't have before I built, right? Yep. That makes sense. But man,
that kind of goes to one of my questions.
Well, dude, I think we're gonna ask the same one.
There you go. We did this before. Let's see if it's. Go ahead.
I don't think it is.
Let's go.
It might not be, but one of the questions we ask people is if you were stripped of everything. Yeah. If you were stripped of everything, how would you build it back? And it's not, you weren't stripped of everything, but you just mentioned that you were at a break-even point. I don't have to ask the question hypothetically to you. I can ask it what's next for you? What do you want to do? You have all the knowledge. You've built it up. You've worked in several different sectors, and you understand business now. What's next for you?
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I told you guys I closed on a little multifamily deal today, which is exciting. The way the deal came together is amazing. Before I just exited the brokerage, by the way, 4 weeks ago. And that was a very purposeful, there's kind of a philosophy behind that decision, which was, in order for anything new or big to come into your life, you have to free up space for it to do so. And the biggest block in my life was the brokerage. I had my relationship had entered into the obligatory space, where I was doing it because I was obligated to the promises that I had made to all the people within that company. And for me, that big thing of but I know what I have to do. I know that if I'm going to go do what I'm supposed to do in the world, this is the thing that's stopping me from doing that. And so exited the brokerage just 4 or 5 weeks ago. And I would say the several months leading up to that were two big pivotal moments. One where I was in my office alone doing weird things that I do in my office. We can talk about those too. And I wrote down, I'm the world's greatest speaker, right? Now, what I mean by I'm the world's greatest speaker is not that you're going to think I'm the world's greatest speaker, but what does it take to be the world's greatest? What are the steps that it takes to be great? It's the quiet work, right? It's the stuff that nobody sees, when nobody's looking. And I clearly understand what that means. And so for me, that's going to be an artistic endeavor for me. The other is the reputation that I've built in this town specifically. I have access to what most people wish in terms of money, relationships, deals. I mean, it's just so much word of mouth in this city. It's a 6 million person city, but it acts very small. And so from that perspective, it's I just got to go get myself deep in deals. I got to go take some risks. I know enough now that I can risk myself in or risk myself out of deals. I'm really not worried. And I've got enough horsepower now to be able to play. And so on my way over here, I had one of the best luxury spec builders in Paradise Valley call me and go, hey, dude, I just want to tell you, Dan has access to a $500 million fund. He'll spend as much as he wants, but he calls me big time. And he calls him big time because he does only big luxury specs. And he goes, he's made most of his money doing smaller deals. And he wants me to call you and go, let's go. And not only does he want you to source him, but he wants to bring you in as a partner on the portfolio. Like this happened right now. And I parked my car and I like got out of my car and I looked up and I was like, it's fucking time. Like right now, it's time where like, it's that thing you don't know when you let go of the idea of knowing what's going to happen and you get comfortable not knowing, the rest takes care of itself.
It's powerful stuff, man. Wow. Congratulations on all your success. And once again, I just want to bring it back to like the real part of this conversation, because I think a lot of people hide from things. And you mentioned funny things you do in your office. My brain went left, right. I'm sure all the boys listening, I'm like, weird, damn, bro, chill. Yeah. But I will say, I think it's funny. It's the positive affirmations I think you mean. It's like, how do you talk yourself into bringing things into reality and making the universe make them happen for you? Happened when you pulled up. I mean, you closed on the brokerage. Congratulations. I think you're at a point now where it's funny. It goes back to his conversation or his question about like when you're stripped from zero. A lot of times people ask, well, do I have any money or do I have any connections? And they go to no. We're like, hey, you have nothing. You start over. And most people, they'll start back with like, the first thing I'm going to do is try to build up my network. So can you talk to the power of networking and the power of like mastermind groups and like, paying to get in other rooms around people that are at a higher level than you, and you try to be in rooms with them so you can elevate to their level?
Absolutely. I want to go back for just a second, remind me of network. I'm going to come back to it. But so that there's something tactical for that last question, for me, it was take inventory of all the things that I was doing in a day, month, quarter, year, and eliminate the things that were time wasters or that didn't create results that I wanted. Take the things that really created high-level results and double down on those. It was really a healthy exercise for me. And to put that into action, remember, a lot of the things that I'm talking about are very new because I have this kind of new identity, if you will, or lack thereof. And so for the month of November, I'm calling it November, and I'm saying no to everything. Like 100% of everything. I got a guy who was like, dude, the biggest party ever. All these people are going to be there, blah, 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 blah. Sent him a text, said, hope you'll support me. No is November for me. I'm hunkering down my family, spirituality, health, quiet time. Because I'm in a unique mental space. I don't have an identity that I've had for a long time. I've been needed by 300 people for 10 years. That creates a lot of momentum. And when you just push the stop button, because I have no earnout, right? I'm done. Like, I'm a free man. That was part of the deal. And so it sounds really cool until it's there. And then you're like a guy standing naked in the desert and you're like, what do I do now? And the best way for me to go and find the answers is to get even quieter. It's the scariest place to go because I've been making a lot of noise for a long time, right? So
I really like that. And we can get to the networking piece, but it's so interesting because I think depending on the audience listening to this, there's a lot of people that maybe they're not exiting a business, but they're exiting their W-2 job. My buddy just did this. And it's like, you have maybe skill sets or superpowers, right? That you mentioned the identity piece. And I think that's a big thing, right? You mentioned like ghosts come out of the closet and you're like, holy shit, like I'm confronting things that like maybe my weaknesses that I could just put to the table now. And I had these superpowers to put all these deals together, the number one salesman, right? All these things. And now you're kind of rebuilding or like repurposing your superpowers into something you want to pump your energy into. Maybe it's not around dollars. It's maybe family. Maybe it's health. It's what do you want to do? I think a lot of people, we talk about architecting your professional life, right? And we do that. And we, as men, I think and women too, but just specifically for us three, like there's pride in that. And you can wake up every day and there's purpose. And then when that's stripped away for better or for worse, you're like, whoa, I am starting over. And it's like, what do you want your brand and your next step to be? I do want to talk about, I think it's almost like a giving back mentality now. You're at a pinnacle, man. Like you reached a lot of levels of success, up and down roller coaster. But talk about this deal that you did with the gentleman that you talked to us pre-recording from Ghana. And
oh yeah,
like that's how you're impacting the world.
Yes, so cool. This has been so. You asked me what I want to do, and ultimately, the thing that I get the most juice from, like purely being selfish, but it also is giving, of course, is speaking on stage. Like it is just. There's nothing in the world that feels like that for me. Like all the preparation.
I can tell.
Thank you.
Yep.
I mean, all the preparation, like the staring in the mirror. I rehearse in front of my son. He's 13, 14 years old and he's a little asshole. So he like laughs at me when I say dumb stuff and like an asshole in the best way. He's like me, And so it's just that like those things that I can anchor myself to in memories of like, I'm getting ready to be on stage in front of a few hundred people and I'm practicing in front of my 14-year-old, which is way scarier because he's going to be super honest with me,
Yes.
roast me. And so really speaking is the thing. So, and young people, helping young people, I told you a little bit about my mom background and schools and stuff like that. And I always knew I would be okay. I always knew I would do whatever I wanted to do. I didn't know I'd be successful. I just knew I would do whatever I wanted to do, if that makes sense. And I want to help younger people, especially, I always say like 19 to 27 were the hardest years of my life. And in those years specifically, I just want to give young people hope that they can do it, because those years are just, we don't know what we are. We're like turtles on our back for the most part. I mean, I'm generalizing, right? So anyway, I just said that social media started to kind of work the way I wanted it to, creating organic conversations and reach outside of my local state. And I had a video go viral, total accidental thing. I was eating pizza in Old Town Scottsdale, and the Hard Knocks guys were there. And they rolled up to me. They rolled up to another guy and asked him, and he bombed. The guy bombed. They were right next to me. And I'm like eating pizza. I'm like, you guys want some more content? And they're like, sure, can you rip? I'm like, let's go. And just stood up and went. And it's like
Sick.
30 million or something. It went bananas, right?
I think I saw that, and now I didn't even realize.
Yeah.
Wondering where you saw the face?
Now I'm putting it all together.
I
yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
And so I have a bunch of young people reaching out to me now here, like the target audience that I really wanted are reaching out to me now through social saying, how do I get started? And every once in a while, I'll be like, hey, you have 10 minutes for a call right now. Like, I'm going to put you to the test.
Back
if
to
you
where
reach
you were.
out to me, that's it. Like, here you go. It's your shot, you know? And so this kid reaches out. His name's George. And God, I can't. I almost want to get emotional already. I haven't even said anything yet. So George reaches out. I get on the phone with him. And he's in Columbus, Ohio at the time. I learned his story. He's from Brooklyn, but then I learned his other story, which he's from Ghana. He's from Africa. And so we end up talking, and he's like, help me out, give me some basics, anything to get started. I know we only have 10 minutes. So at the end, I'm like, well, what are you doing? Because you kind of sound like you know what you're talking about a little bit. Like, you're in the mix. And he's like, well, yeah, I have some deals. I just can't find the money. And I'm like, man, that's the easy. Once you find good deals, the money's the easy part to find. Like, I can help you with that. So what are you doing to find deals? SMS texting. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, do you have any good deals? Like someone I can call on and try and help you close a deal. Long story short, he gives me a real deal, and I don't close it because I'm too excited. I can't believe it's happening. And I talk too long and too much. You guys are allowed to laugh. And so I'm talking too much, and she ends up selling it with a real estate agent. But he and I stay in contact, and I have him deploy his SMS texting here. And he gets me like 12 working appointments in 2 days. And today, we just closed our first deal, and I wired him 10 grand to his checking account. On November 13th, I'm going to, speaking of networking, I'm going to Tony Robbins in New York on the 13th. He lives in Brooklyn, and I hit him up last night. I'm like, you want to come? We'll come to the city and take you to dinner. So we're going to go to the city and have dinner with him. But he's like, he texts me, he's like, I cannot believe what's happening right now. Like, why did you even respond to me? And why did we talk on the phone? And, he lives in a 300 square foot apartment with his family in Brooklyn. And I just wired him 10 G's, for
You
the
get me
deal.
emotional, man.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
just stop
sick.
looking at me.
Yeah.
How
I know,
much
right?
more powerful is that than building something for yourself? Like, to me, I like, it really hits home. Like, we're building a coaching community, or we're teaching people how to buy the first rental property. And we were on, like, not super late, but 8, 9 p.m. last night with a couple who was about to close on their first, or put offers on their first property. And I'm so jacked up for them because I'm watching them create this legacy for themselves. And to me, it's like, that's so much more important now, even though we've had a little bit of success, than to go make $1 million. Like, it just doesn't, like, do you feel the same way at the stage that you're at? Like, I mean, you don't get emotional about making yourself money, like,
Of course, you're right.
Maybe, but
no, I mean, I did when I got back to where I could breathe again. I mean, that was emotional. But anybody who's, I think it starts to change after 100 grand, 200 grand in a year, like 300 grand. You're like, I don't know. I kind of needed that because I started living a lifestyle, and you make 500 grand. I really needed that. Taxes got expensive, and all of a sudden it just, I don't know, you build yourself into your financial income to a degree. I mean, I think for the most part. And so that kind of loses its luster. But this type of an experience to me, there's this thing in my mind where I'm like, I swear I'm going to bring this kid back to Arizona, and like, he's going to be on my team, and we're going to do 1,000 deals together. And just because it's the way the world works. But I mean, for me, what's even cool too is getting into him and being like, so, he's like, man, if I could just make X amount more, what for? He's like, so I can move out of my parents' house. And I'm like, dude, can I just give you the money? Because if you can get away from your family, which there's more there, I'll save for off camera. But it's like that I know what you're capable of. And it's like, but also knowing when you're growing people, you don't want to give them too much either. There's that delicate balance, but I can't help it just because it's such an intoxicating thing outside of just the money itself.
It's interesting too, and I kind of can speak to this. It's a newer thing for me, but you're a dad, dude. And so like going through this, and it's it's a different thing to raise a kid, and it's like you've raised a business, right? And all these people you supported, and they have families and things too. But the way you approach this conversation, I think, is probably much different than you would have like right out the gate when you were in your younger days. And you're at a different place from not only your personal life, your professional life. This kid on social media sees what he deems as a celebrity getting interviewed, probably nice car, I'd imagine. They pull up and you're eating your pizza, and then he just shoots you like a shot in the dark, right? And you reply to him. Not only that, you take the next step, you have the call, brings you back to your days when you were tested to go to the Mercedes dealership. It's a full circle story, man. And then you not only, you didn't just like give him the time of day, then you said, send me a deal. You called the other deal. I just, putting all the pieces together, you put the effort in. And I think this is something that it just plays to your story. This is something you're going to look back on. It's just going to be probably that pivotal moment for you when you realize this is what I should be doing. And I know it's like a midway point of the story, but I just want to bring this up here because it's so inspiring. It's something you watch in a movie, and you're doing stuff in real life. You're the guy who made it, and some guy who's in a tiny little apartment trying to escape and like make his life turn something. This kid is going to look back at that, and it's an interesting piece that you're going to play so much in his story. Like you're already seeing in the future. I know you're big in affirmations, but I see it, and I see him on your team doing big things. And I just commend you because there's a lot of people that make a ton of money and they just have this attitude about them, and they aren't giving back, and they're just hoarding the money, or they're spending it on the car, spending it on the house. And like, I think that's what a lot of people think when they see social media and they see things. But for us, it seems like every conversation we have like this, there's someone that has a similar story where they just helped this one person, or they've done this one thing, and if we ask a question, they'll give us an hour of their time. They don't charge. It's like a lot of the guys who have made it, guys and gals, are at a point in their life where they want to give back, and they've reached the top, and they're like, dude, I'm good. Like, how can I help you? I see the struggle. I know what you've been through. I've had the late nights. And so I just commend you, man. Thank you for sharing the story because
Appreciate it.
You had me emotional. I couldn't look at you in the eye because I thought about my kid and like, just if we were in the struggle and someone could help out when I couldn't, like, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, I would just say too, I do it because I really enjoy it. I mean, my fiance now is like, babe, like, are we going to go to breakfast, or are you just going to be on the phone with this kid from, I was sharing you guys, I've been on the phone with a kid from Dubai, had a call with a kid from London. And that's really fun for me because I'm not super well traveled. I am in the Americas, but not like east and west of. And so it's really cool to connect and understand these different markets and hear the ambition of young people all over the world when they have far more limitation than we do, right? It's really cool for me to learn and get inspired from it in real time. But I'm like, babe, yeah, we'll go to breakfast, but it's going to be probably a little bit more like brunch because this is so fun. This is a good one.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I'm just enjoying it because it's fun. Like it's what I enjoy doing.
That's great. I want to lean into this because I didn't know where this conversation would go, but it's brought me to a point where I want to ask this question. So candidly, Ryan and I come from similar backgrounds in the sense that we did not grow up poor. We did not grow up with a ton of money. And I ask this because I find a common theme in entrepreneurs is actually not like us, where it's like they've come from like really humble beginnings, much further humbly. That's definitely not a word. More humble than us. And I wonder,
should use it the rest of the way.
I wonder if you see a theme in that, or maybe you can at least speak to like how that trained you to become the entrepreneur that you are. Because sometimes, truly, I have an imposter syndrome. Like I maybe don't have that, you know, and like that's a whole other thing I can work through. But I'm curious about you and other entrepreneurs that you've met, and if you find a theme in that, and if you think that there's something there that you tap into.
I mean, I do think there's a generalized theme there. More entrepreneurs that I run into. But I also would say pay attention to if it just sounds like a cooler story that you hook onto a little bit more, because I think that might be the case too. You know, being a father, I think a lot of things come down to parenting. I really do. In fact, the builder developer I was on the phone with, when he picked up the phone, he goes, "I just picked up CJ from school. CJ, say hi to Brian." She goes, "Hi, Brian." You know, and I like talked to her about, and he goes, "Yeah, she's really getting into books right now." And I said, "That's a parenting thing." That was my first thing. And he goes, "We read to her every night." And I go, the difference between kids who want to read or like books are the ones who read to them. So the kids who like to work, I grew up trying to be a pro snowboarder. That was my main ambition. I grew up surfing, skateboarding. I still do all of them pretty consistently. And one of my favorite surfers is a guy named Jamie O'Brien. And he grew up at a wave called Pipeline in Hawaii. And he tells the story about his dad would take him to Pipeline, and he would tell him to go paddle out there, and he would get his face kicked in. I mean, people die there every year. When he was 12 or 13 years old, and lo and behold, he won the Pipe Masters 3 or 4 times and went on to be the best pipeline surfer ever. And people are like, how did you do it? And he's like, my dad drove me to the beach and duct taped, the story is he duct taped a helmet to his head and made him go and surf pipeline. And like, is that what you should do as a parent to every kid? Probably not. But guess what? It's a really good analogy for like, why are you going to be successful even though you didn't have a story like mine, or that generalized story of the rose from the ashes kind of thing. I just think sometimes those stories just sound cooler than the other ones, so we hook onto them a little bit more.
Thanks for the perspective. I appreciate it. Yeah.
There's some chip though, we could talk about, like, go from athletes and just, I don't know how to explain this, but there's high level individuals or people that are driven. It just seems like there's, you look to your left and you're right in your cubicle as you're coming up in this game, right? And most people have W-2 jobs before they become investors. And there's just, some people will stay in the W-2 their whole life. And then other people have this fire in them and this chip and there's something that gets them out of there and pulls them out. And I don't know, people ask me this all the time. It's hard for me to actually vocalize and put into like what intrinsically motivates you guys. And it can go back to childhood, but it's things based on how you grew up, how I guess parenting plays into it, but like things you've experienced, like someone talking down to you, someone not believing in you, and like things that you just let live with you. I go to, some people are a fan of this, some people aren't. I bring this up once in a while, but I grew up in New England. And so every Sunday I got to watch Tom Brady. And his story, you can say what you want about the family situation right now, but like his story being drafted 199, he never forgot that. He remembered all the guys drafted before him. And every day, even after he won 5 Super Bowls, he's still remembering that and talking shit to himself. And he's like, dude, just remember. And I think to be that type of person in your field, whatever it is, like you have to have something that you look back on inside of you, or else you'll just get lazy and comfortable. I don't know if it's lazy is the word, but like complacent. And so I guess it brings me to one of my next questions, and probably one of my last for you, is like, you reach this pinnacle, right? And I know you're at this growth point and inflection point, but at what point in life do you think enough will be enough? And we ask this to a lot of like entrepreneurs. Is it a dollar amount? Is it a feeling? Is it like, when will you be content and happy with your purpose in life?
Definitely will be a dollar amount. I don't think I have too much more to go. And that sounds like I have a ton of dough. I don't. I'm a simplistic guy. It's funny when I said hard knocks and you went nice car. I drive a 2018 Toyota Sequoia. So,
nice car.
I don't, but I mean,
not shabby.
It's not a Bentley, you know what I mean?
Must have been the pizza. You must have been dogging that thing. Dude.
I was just sitting there just grubbing, and they definitely didn't walk up to my car, but no, I'm a low key guy. I've tried. I mean, I just had a pretty decent payday and I'm like, okay, what do I want to buy? I tried. I want a classic car, and I went and tried to find a couple, and I'm like, I know it's going to only be cool for like a week. I already know it's not going to last long, and then it's going to sit in the garage and annoy me. And so it's just not my jam. And, freedom's really my thing. I want to go, I have this kind of mixed adventure life where I like 5-star hotels. I just last weekend slept in a one-man tent on a cot in 18 inches of snow. Right. I mean, and I loved it. I loved every second of it. Went on a 14-mile horseback ride with 200 dudes and drank whiskey and gambled. It was a blast. And so it's like, I want to be able to do that whenever I want. Right. So for me, it's getting to a place where, it's spitting off, enough money that I can live my pretty good lifestyle is pretty much it. In terms of work, though, or be done, absolutely never. I'll be just taking more calls from kids from Ghana, and I'll be doing more speaking engagements, and I'll probably be in a high school somewhere in a small town because have a cabin there teaching a class, part-time or something. I'll always be doing something just because it's what I'm here to do.
Beautiful. Last question from me. Knowing what you know now, if you could go back and look in the mirror or talk to your 18-year-old self, I always say this, pending he would listen because my 18-year-old self wouldn't, but if you could tell your 18-year-old self something, what advice or what message would you give him and why?
The first thing I would say to him is, I'm proud of you. Yeah, that's the first thing. Yeah, I shouldn't be here, man. I really shouldn't. So that's the first thing I would say. The other thing is, let go. If you do your best, which I'm pretty committed to doing most of the time, there's so many things that are going to happen outside of your control. And when I did my best and things happened outside of my control, I let it antagonize me. And it was outside of my control. I let it ruin my night. I let it ruin my week. I let it ruin a month. And it was outside of my control. I did my best. And so I think if we can come to terms, I think if I was talking to that 18-year-old guy and I'm like, if you go to bed at night and you ask yourself the question of, did you do your best? And you did your best and shit's going sideways, let go. Let go. It's going to work itself out. It does every time. 47 years old, been through some gnarly shit. I'm undefeated. I'm sitting here with you guys right now. I've never died, you know? So I think it would have allowed me to enjoy that run, the run up, a lot more. Because I was, you know, every win was the greatest win ever, and every failure was the worst failure ever. And I don't think it has to be that way.
I needed to hear that at 33, so thank you for telling me. Appreciate it.
I think one of the biggest battles, or the biggest battle that we all go through, is the one between your ears. And a lot of the time, that 12-round fight every day is you versus you, and you're your biggest competition. And it's hard, and some people can't handle it. And for you to realize that, and just be able to spread that message to someone else, and so real. I don't think we've had a more real answer. This has been an emotional interview, and I appreciate it. I feel like I've known you forever, which has been awesome. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing it. We all go through these battles. We've had long nights talking each other off a ledge and in certain ways and things. And seriously, like, to be able to share these types of conversations and emotions, I want listeners to know, like, this journey is long. It's a marathon. And if you're getting into the investing entrepreneurial world, and you're going to have to vouch for yourself. You're going to have to clap for yourself when no one else does. You're going to have these positive affirmation moments, coaching yourself the way through it. And then it's what you do when the lights are out and when no one's watching. And that's truly who shapes you. And so Brian North, congrats on all your success. And more importantly, just thank you for sharing the real side of real estate, the real side of business. We appreciate you, man.
My pleasure. Thanks for the platform.